What is up, people? Today we are talking about the 5 steps that you need to take to start recording drums, tracking live drums in Pro Tools. I grew up, I always worked in Logic, and I have a video that is about the difference between Pro Tools and Logic as far as it relates to tracking drums. And I think Pro Tools is my preferred way to do it, not only because I think the workflow is good, which we'll get into, but also most of the producers that I work with use Pro Tools, and that is why I choose to go and use Pro Tools to track live drums. But today we're going to talk about the 5 steps you need to take, because when I made the switch from Logic to Pro Tools, I was very, very lost, very confused. The key commands, all of it really confused me, how to set everything up. So hopefully today I'm going to save you some time and get you just 5 steps to how to track drums in Pro Tools. You can go into the description right now and download a PDF that gives you an overview of all 5 steps that I'm about to talk about and a little cheat sheet to remind you how to do some of it and all the key commands that I go over. So get that in the description right now. You can download that for free. Just visit the link in the description. I'm not going to go in super deep detail. This is just an overview for people that might just be starting, that might just be trying to get a feel for Pro Tools and get a little less confused. So let's hop over to the computer and get into it. So I am on a Mac right now, but another reason I love Pro Tools is because it works on Mac and PC, and I actually use it on both. The first thing is just setting up your interface and setting up your ins and your outs. So when you click on Pro Tools, before anything even launches, before you start a session, you have the option, I'm selected on Pro Tools, you have the option to go to Setup, you can go to Hardware. What you're going to want to do is make sure that you select your interface. You might have a couple options, you might have whatever. Make sure that your interface is selected there. And then you can go to your playback engine and, just make sure that your playback engine is the interface that you're supposed to be selected on, and you can change your sample rate and all of that stuff if you want. The higher the buffer size, the more latency. The lower the buffer size, the less latency. We're not going to get too deep into that. Hopefully when you set it up, it'll be good, but if you have a lot of latency, just know you can drop this down as low as possible, and that's going to help out your latency. Then the last thing you're going to want to do is, after you have made sure that your interface is selected, you're going to want to go to your I/O setup, and these are all your inputs and outputs that your interface has to offer. So with the outputs, you're probably just going to want monitors 1 and 2. I have a lot of outputs that I could choose, but really the only ones that I want, and the only ones that you will likely want, are the inputs and outputs 1 and 2 on your interface. For the inputs, it gets a little more confusing. What you're going to want to do is, you're going to have all your XLR cables running into your interface, so you're just going to want to know, on my interface, input number 1 is kick. Input number 2 is, I labeled it float because, and what you'll see here is you'll see IP1, IP2. When you drop this down, you'll see IP3, IP4. I rename these. Literally, all you have to do is double click and type in whatever you want and hit enter. So I just go through and label, my stuff never moves. I'm always recording the same stuff into the same inputs. So I just label all of these what they are. That's that. And then once you're done with that, you can hit OK. And that's good to go. Now you can start a new session. So go ahead and hit Command N on a Mac, and this is, kind of your dashboard. If you have templates that you've built out, that's cool. You can do that, but I don't have any templates that I want to pull up because I want to show you what it looks like on a brand new session. So what you're going to do is you're going to want to go to, drum demo for YouTube. Okay, so that's my title. I'm going to save it on a local storage. I don't want to save it anywhere. Now you need to choose your settings down here, your sample rate and all of that stuff. For me, what I usually do for professional sessions that I'm sending these and it's getting mixed and it's a whole thing, I'm going to use 48 sample rate and bit depth of 24. That's a high quality thing. Everyone's going to be happy with that, whatever. For other stuff where I'm not that concerned, I switch these down to 44.1 and 16. Not a big deal. If you're just doing stuff yourself, 44.1 and 16 is going to be great. I/O settings. You can go through and pick here. I know that I set up this input list. I know that those are going to be the inputs that I want. If you have different inputs for different things and you want them to be labeled differently, you can go back to that step before, label it all, whatever. So, and right now I'm gonna just, the last thing is you can pick where you want it to go on your computer. I'm gonna save it to my external hard drive. I'm gonna put it in the YouTube folder. All right, now I'm gonna hit create. So that's the end of step 1, is just setting everything up and making sure everything is in place where it needs to be. Step 2 is going through, and I'm just gonna show you really quick all of the key commands that you'll need to know. This is not gonna be all of the key commands, just the ones that you'll need to know. So what I do is, if you're gonna be recording to a click and you're gonna want things on the grid, make sure that this is selected on grid over here. The other thing that you'll notice is you might just have one of these tools right here selected. If you click the bar above them, it actually selects all of them. We'll get to that a little bit later, but that makes it so that all 3 of these tools, depending on where you grab an audio region, do their own thing. So that's a good thing. The other thing is you're gonna want tab to transient right here. You're gonna want that enabled. What that does is you can select an audio track and hit tab, and it will jump to the nearest transient. So that's just useful when you're editing. You can change the value of the grid if you only want 1/8 notes. You can do that. If you only want the grid to be, 1/4 notes, you can do that. The other thing you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna make sure that this right here, this little yellow thing, is selected. I'm not even sure what they call this, but it is essentially, Pro Tools has all these key commands that if you have that enabled, only take like one button, and it's like a quick way to do key commands. So just make sure this is selected. Those are all the settings you need to have. Some of the important key commands. Command 1 brings up this little view, and that's command number pad 1. That's the other weird thing about Pro Tools. You do kind of need a number pad for it. So command number pad 1 brings up this, and you can choose your project tempo here. If you want to count off, you can change a count off. There's some nice features in there. Command 1 to close it. Command 8 brings up Beat Detective if you need to use Beat Detective for anything. If you press the number 3 on the number pad, that will start recording. The letters R and T actually zoom you in and out. And if you want a cheat sheet of all of these key commands that I think are useful, you can actually download that in the description of this video. So just so you know, that's where you can find those. If I hit number pad 2, I will jump a measure. If I hit number pad 1, I'll jump back a measure. So, if you're trying to cue something up and you're trying to start right at the bridge, you can hit number pad 1 and 2 to get you right on the downbeat of that measure. Those are a lot of the key commands you'll need to know. Enter takes you back to the beginning of the thing. And that's, most of what you need to know. That's a basic overview of some of the more useful key commands. So the next thing that you'll want to do are set up audio tracks. I want to make sure that, I have 12 inputs when I record drums. I want to make sure that all 12 of those things get heard. So what I need to do is I need to hit Command-Shift-In, and it brings up this little dialog box that says, hey, how many tracks do you want to set up? And kind of like, what's the deal? You can set up stereo tracks, so like my overheads, when I want to set up overheads, those are a stereo set of mics that I want to always be tied together, so I can set those up as a stereo input. But right now we're going to keep it mono. I want to set up an audio track, not a master fader, not any of this stuff, and I want it in samples. And I can hit, you can select here, how many do you want to create? Let's create 10 different audio tracks. So hit enter. Okay, now I have a bunch of audio tracks. So what I want to do is, and you'll see it's important to label your in and outs. So by the way, if you don't see what I'm seeing here, you can right click and then it shows you, hey, what do you want to see? So right now, all we're going to worry about, we're going to take away the inserts here. All we're worried about is seeing the track that we're on and the in and out, okay? So the reason that we went through and labeled all our in and outs is now that we have these tracks pulled in, it will show you this is my input and this is my output. So my input, interface, kick, that's there. So now I can see that this is kick drum. So when I go to label this audio track, kick. Great. Audio 2, I'm actually using this as a second like snare sizzle. This input is snare bottom, snare bottom. This is my rack tom. So you can go through and double click like I'm doing, or literally I'm just double clicking, typing it in and hitting enter. But to get to the next track, if you don't want to like hit enter, double click the next one, hit enter, double click the next one, you can just do command right arrow, and that takes you down to the next track. And I can label this hat, command arrow, command right arrow. This is floor tom. This is room 1, room 2. Audio 9 is, let's scroll down so I can see. And this is where it kind of jumps because my interface is all weird. So for audio 9, I'm going to go interface. I'm going to go to the crotch mic. And this is going to be snare top. And I'm going to switch this. So if you just need to switch the input, all you have to do is, click on the input, go to your interface, and find what you want. So I'm going to do snare top, and I'm going to drag this up to the top. And now I need overheads, and I want to add those overheads below my floor tom right before my room mics. So I'm going to hit command save because I've done some work now. I've built out some tracks. I want to make sure I don't lose this progress. And I'm going to hit shift command in, and I'm going to add, instead of adding 2 mono tracks, I'm going to add 1 stereo track. Hit create. And now I'm going to go here, and in the interface, you'll see that these are all like stereo linked, and I'm going to do my overheads, and I'm going to do overheads. So I now have tracks for everything. And if you hit command equal, it pulls up the mixer view, and you can see I have all these tracks now. Nothing is panned except for the overheads. So, usually hat I'll pull over to the left. Rack tom I'll pull over to the left. Floor tom I'll pull a little over to the left. The right. And that's pretty much it. So all of my tracks are set up. The last thing I'm going to do is, now that all these tracks are nice and neat and organized and whatever, I'm going to click the bottom one, hold shift, and click the top. So now all these tracks are selected. You can also start from the very top and hold shift and go all the way down, select them all. And now what I'm going to do is, well, one, I can come to window and choose color palette, and I can click back over here on my tracks, and I can select a color. Like if I want all my drum tracks to be red, I can select red. So I like that. And now all the waveforms when I actually record something will be red. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit command G, and it brings up this group, and I'm going to group all of these drum tracks together. And I want to make sure that I have the type as mix and edit, because what this will do is, when I start to, if I do 3 takes of a song and I want to start choosing, comping from one take to another, so maybe the second take was my favorite take, but there's a fill in the first take that I liked better. I want to make sure that all these tracks are grouped together, so that when I'm switching between the takes that I have, when I'm, editing the ins and all crossfading and all that stuff, I want to make sure that all these drums stay together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a mix and edit group, and I'm going to go to globals and make sure that volume and mute are together. You don't necessarily have to do that, but I'm going to label this group drums. So now, down here in group, you can see that drums is highlighted. If I click it, it's not highlighted. So, if it's not highlighted, I can go here, and if I want to mute all these, I can, mute them one at a time. But if I select the group, I can click mute, and all of them are muted now. Same with solo. I can solo all of these when they're grouped. When they're not grouped, I have to solo one at a time. So this is super useful and really, really important to group things together, because when we start recording stuff, it's going to be really important these are all grouped together. I am going to record something now. When I record, I need to record enable my tracks that I want to record. I want to record all these. So the only thing that grouping doesn't let you do is it doesn't let you, record enable everything all at once. So I'm going to go highlight all of these. Before I do that, I want to make sure that I'm going to right click my record button over here and make sure that it's set to quick punch. This is just the setting that you'll want to use. just trust me, that's the setting that you want to use. I'm going to record something by record enabling all of these. So you can see all those red buttons are flashing. If I clap, you're hearing drums, and I'm going to record something. So literally I'm just going to hit 3, and now I'm recording something. And when I'm done, I'm going to hit spacebar. And now I'm not recording anything. And obviously I didn't play any drums here, so you don't really see anything. But now I have this audio. And because this audio is grouped, if I move some of them, I move all of them. So that's why you need to group them, because like if I want to say this is my first take here, all this audio I recorded, and I'm like, okay, I'm happy with that, but I want to do another take. What I would do is I want to keep this take. I don't want to overwrite this take. I like what I'm doing, but I want another pass at it. What I'm going to do here is find this little arrow here, and I'm going to go to New. When I hit New, you'll notice that audio that I had disappeared, and it's on another playlist now. Now I have a new playlist. So I can go here and record another take, and I'm going to let this one go a little bit longer. So you can see as it's recording, it's going to track what you're doing. That's great. I'm going to hit spacebar. Okay, take number 2 is done. So now I have 2 takes. And if I click on this little arrow, you can see I have 2 playlists here. I have this one that I just recorded and this other one that's shorter. So you can see this one's the shorter one. Go here. This one's. And if I do this without things being grouped, this is where it gets really tricky. If I hit this and I hit 1, now this crotch mic input is now switched to my first playlist, but everything else is playlist 2. That's not what you want. That's going to get really confusing. You're going to have phase issues if you do that. So just make sure that all of this is grouped when you're doing it. So now I can make edits and I can do whatever because I've recorded this. So that is step 4, is just simply recording whatever you need to record. I want to show you, like kind of what it looks like when you finally mix something, and then how to export it. And there's a couple of different options for exporting. So to start mixing, you have your drums, they're tracked, that's great. To start mixing, Command equal to pull up your mixer, and you're just gonna wanna go to here, your inserts, so your plugins and whatever. You're just gonna want to click here, find the plugin you want. If you want an EQ, select your EQ. If you want a compressor or a gate or whatever, do that. And get all you'll see my plugins. All of these are my plugins, and everything pretty much has compression and EQ on it. And once you're done with that, there's 2 options to exporting. You can, and again, these are your pan knobs, so everything's panned like I want it. These are my mix faders, so everything is kind of mixed how I want it. I'm happy with it. Then what you're going to want to do is, if you want to export this as like a fully mixed drum track as a stereo thing, so if I'm going to post this on Instagram and I want to sync it up to a video later, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything in this whole project. Then I'm going to hit Command-Alt-B, and it brings up this bounce. And what I want to do, the bounce source is going to be monitors 1 and 2. That's good. I want to bounce it as, you can choose WAV, MP3, AIFF. I'm going to choose WAV. I'm going to choose Format Interleaved, not multiple mono, not mono summed, interleaved. And then you can choose your bit depth and your sample rate. And then you can choose a name for it, cool thing. Then you can go where you want to save it. And I'll select my, desktop, hit open, then you hit bounce, and it will bounce it out. And that's going to be a full mix. That's going to have all your plugins, all your everything bounced out into one stereo file. That is not what you want to do if you're tracking drums remote for, a mix engineer or something. What you're going to want to do in that case is send them unmixed drum tracks and all of the tracks separate so that they can load them in and mix them themselves. They don't want your already mixed stuff. Most engineers don't. Depends on the situation. I understand there's a lot of situations, but all the engineers I work with, they just want the raw drum tracks all split out. So I have 12 things running. They want all 12 tracks, perfectly synced up. So, and that's the other thing. You got to make sure that all your tracks start at the same 0 as the session. because you're not going to send the Pro Tools session necessarily. And you see this snare bottom track, if I zoom way in, this snare bottom track doesn't quite start at the beginning of the session. So what that means is if I bounce all these out and then I send them to a producer and he loads them into his session, the snare bottom is going to be a little bit off of where it's actually supposed to be, because for some reason, same with the mid room, these are not totally lined up with the beginning of the session. I need to fix that. So what I can do is, again, I'm going to group all my drums. I'm going to zoom way out. What I can do is I can highlight all these and hit Alt-Shift-3. And what that does is it renders all of this stuff in place, and it doesn't mix them together. It doesn't do any of that. All it does is it just, whatever I've highlighted, it's going to make it all one nice and neat audio file. So now if I zoom way in, you can see that the mid room is good to go and the snare bottom starts right at the beginning. So now I know that all of these are the exact same length, so that when I export them, all of them are going to start at the same place and end at the same place. Perfect. So now all I have to do is I'm going to do that same thing. I'm going to select this region, and if I need to change how far, like maybe I don't want to get all of that, I'm going to go here. Great. And then I'm going to go kick, and I'm going to highlight all of these. I'm going to highlight all my tracks, and I'm going to highlight all of the region that I want in the actual finder over here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command-Shift-K, and that brings up Export Selected. This is different than the bounce that we just did. This is not going to add all my EQ and all my compression and everything and mix it down to one stereo file. This is going to bounce out every track as a separate thing. So now what I want to do is I want to make sure these are WAV. You should always send files as high quality WAV files. I'm going to make sure that this is actually multiple mono. I'm going to do 24-bit depth. I'm going to do 48 sample rate. Then I'm going to, don't worry about this too much. Then I'm going to go choose where I want these to bounce. And I'm going to select where I want them to bounce, hit open, and then export. And then what's going to happen is it's going to export all 12 of these tracks into a folder that has all 12 of those tracks. So that's really it. That's kind of like the basics of tracking drums in Pro Tools. So that is a very, 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 very quick overview with how you can get started tracking drums in Pro Tools. There's a lot more to that, but I wanted to, like I said, before I switched from Logic to Pro Tools, I was very confused about how it works, what the advantages are, what it looks like, what the workflow is. So that's a quick overview. So that's it for now. Put down in the comments, do you have any questions about Pro Tools? What DAW do you record in? Chat with me in the comments if you have questions, concerns, thoughts, whatever. A lot of you have a lot of opinions on Pro Tools and all that stuff. So put them down in the comments. I'm happy to read those, chat with you guys about whatever. Remember, you can download the kind of cheat sheet overview of this lesson for free as a PDF in the description below, so go do that. And yeah, if you like this, hit subscribe. I'm coming out with videos pretty much every week. Give it a like if you liked it. Share it with someone if you thought it was handy. I was trying to say helpful and handy, and I just kind of lost my, whatever. If you liked it, share it with someone. That's it. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.